The second most popular question I get when I talk to marketeers is, okay, great, we're going to do a podcast. We've got the equipment and all this sort of stuff. How on earth do we get guests onto our podcast? Any suggestions there?
Yeah, so it's always the hardest time to book a guest is at the start when you don't have any guests at all. But as soon as you have one guest, it gets easier. And so to start with, if you don't have any connections, which, like if you're going to start a podcast in the industry, I assume you have connections. So first you just bring your friends on. But then you ask your friends, do they know anybody that they think is a good fit? And then as soon as you get like a big name, somebody that's famous in like the world of email open rates, then you're going to put the name of that person in all your other outreach to build social proof. And then from there, what I would do is I would find like your ideal guests. That if we take like the Sales Ops show, I would go to and like search for other Sales Ops podcasts, find people who like listen to a couple of episodes, find people who are good, reach out directly to them, be like, I heard you on this episode. Would you like to come on ours? But you'll get to a sweet spot after like 10 guests typically, where the pipeline is rolling. You're asking every guest for a referral. You may even ask a question like, who in the world of email open rates would you most like to take for lunch? If you ask that to every guest, then that's another person you can reach out to. You could be like, we spoke about you on this episode. Would you like to jump on to talk about email open rates? And so there's stuff like that you can like build into the process. So it's like this machine that can continually like spits off guests. And so the cold outreach, you only would have to do at the start to get the ball rolling. You typically get to that point after like 15, 20 guests, we find.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I think some people sort of make the mistake of, okay, thinking about a topic first, getting the subject of the podcast set, right, we're going to do a podcast on this big topic here, and then go and try and find the guests, rather than, I think, get the guests and then talk to them and think about, okay, what kind of subject are we going to do? I think the former, you just get bogged down too much, really.
Yeah, it's called the topic-led or the guest-led strategy. The guest-led strategy is always like easier to do. And so, yeah, especially when you're starting out. When you've got like a backlog of 4 guests and you're like comfortable with a weekly show, you basically got a month. And then you can be like, okay, I want to do a topic about this news story, and you can spend more time trying to find the perfect guest, etc. But not at the start, I would just use the guest-led approach.
Yeah, and I like the idea where you get a really, well-known guest in your industry and kind of use that as a lever. Fiona started our podcast, probably 2.5, 3 years ago. So all credit to her. But she had Dave Gerhardt on the podcast. When he was sort of head of marketing at Drift, and people seeing his name as somebody who's been on our podcast immediately. So it's almost like a magnet.
Yeah, because you can't. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay.
But there's no like Ahrefs, at least that I know of podcasting. So you can't, it's very hard to see how many downloads a podcast gets.
Yes.
There are signals, like you can look at the show's rankings. If you have access to software, you can look at number of ratings or reviews. But most people that are deciding whether to come on a podcast are not doing either of those things. They're simply scanning the list and being like, do I know anybody here?
Yeah.
And if they do, or if they recognize anyone, they'll just say yes.
Yeah.